What I remember is that when I was maybe 15 or 16, I started to have a conscious feeling that we just all did a poor job of listening to one another. I take it that feeling must have come from how I felt about being listened to or not listened to myself. But that feeling never left me, and I think from that time forward it started to shape me to some extent. And so by the time I was in my mid-20s, I remember making a kind of conscious commitment to try to prioritize listening in my life. I turned 65 last week, so that was about 40 years ago, and I've tried to live that way, and I think it's become a part of who I am. It's a part of what I believe in, what I think is important in being a human being who cares about other human beings. Though I don't remember exactly how this idea of the Listening Project came to me, I think it comes out of those feelings and experiences. The idea came to me about 3 years before I started it, and I think it had something to do with the time then, the time we're living in now, the way our society is, the way we seem to be more quick to judge one another, to dismiss one another, to not really care to put the time in to get to know one another. And I don't think that we as people can afford to do that. My family historically came from Eastern Europe, and they all immigrated either through New York or Canada, ended up in the Detroit area, and that's where both my mom and dad were born. And I was born actually in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we lived there a year, and then we bounced around a bunch, New Jersey and then Missouri. My folks got divorced when we were living in St. Louis, and my dad stayed in that area. And my twin brother and I and my mom, we moved to Maryland, and then finally her brother took a job at the UCSD, University of California, San Diego in 1968. And we followed a year later and moved out here in 1969, moved to San Diego County. I was a quiet kid. You know, I think I was kind of stereotyped as an egghead, you know, maybe a little strange. I don't know. You know, a kid that other kids, many of them perhaps didn't have an interest in checking out. And so I think that I probably had some loneliness at times myself. My wife jokes that I was never a kid, that I was sort of born older. And it took me a while to, in a sense, find my own tribe, my own clan, my own group.
Estamos aquí esperando a ver qué pasa, que si alguien se sienta a platicar con Josh. Ahí lo pueden ver ahí de ese lado. Y bueno, llevamos aquí un ratito, bueno, un ratote, y la gente pues no se ha parado. Se paró un policía a hablar con él, sí, y una señora también. Y yo siento como que este lugar que escogió él, pues la gente viene a la playa, la gente no muchas veces quiere platicar, es un poquito más cerrada. Y no hay mucho tráfico, pero tú dices que tú lo conociste aquí.
Yo lo conocí acá y sí tenía gente, o sea, tuve que esperar unos minutos para platicar con él, porque leí su cartelón, nos pasamos, íbamos a ir ya hacia allá a agarrar el carro y me regresé porque me pareció muy interesante su proyecto. Entonces me regresé a leer bien y a platicar con él, y fue cuando te dije que nos juntáramos con él para platicar. Entonces, pero ¿quién invierte más bien el tiempo de su familia los domingos, los fines de semana, por los últimos 3 años, para venir, poner 2 sillas y tratar de que alguien se siente con él y se exprese o que alguien lo oiga.
I met Josh in the library at Northwestern University in January of 1984. We just could talk about anything. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, and he was such a genuine and kind and warm person, and he was activist, and he cared about so many things, and he was well-read, and he was Jewish, and he was interesting. So there was just so much to it, and I think, you know, over the years, we've, you know, he's my best friend, he's my confidant, he's my partner, he's everything. Josh is a caretaker. He's always got people that he's taking care of. He takes care of me, he takes care of Eris. We took care of his mother. She lived across the street until she passed. And then we had Rose, who was his AP English teacher.
So we had a relationship for over 40 years, and in the last 5 years of her life, I was sort of her primary on-the-ground caregiver. I wasn't her actual, day-to-day caregiver per se. There were people who helped, but for those years I saw her almost every day.
It was after Rose died, and he said, I'm going to do the listening project. And I was like, okay.
Let's get over, our fears and anxieties about doing that, and let's make our poster and get a couple of chairs and go out there and see what happens.
But I don't think I was surprised by it. I was really excited. I thought it was really cool, the idea of going out and just opening yourself up to the world. I think is really neat.
And he planned for the first day, and I'm trying to remember where he went on the first day. And he came back ecstatic that day. He came back just grinning ear to ear like a kid who just got, spent 3 days at Disneyland and had the best time.
So Josh,
Sir,
how are we doing?
well, we're doing fine.
We're doing fine. Those kind of days that you don't have any quote unquote, volunteers.
Well, so I think the most important thing to say is that I'm not here for my benefit. I'm not here to satisfy my desire to, count the number of people who are sitting with me or whatever that may be. Like I may have said to you before, in a sense, the point of this is to open a door.
So let me see if I understood. As long as you have this portal, this option available to people, you will feel okay with that. Because
Yes.
you have it here, there is the option, take it or leave it. This is your option.
Yes, I'm at peace. Usually I do this for 3 to 4 hours at a time. That's plenty of time being out in the open air,
Yeah.
the sun
Dennis.
and wind.
Now tell me, I heard that it's a tradition in your house that when you come back at dinner time, you talk about what happened during the day. All right, is it true?
If my family asks me to give them a sense of what it was like, I'm happy to do that.
So we do family dinner as often as we can. So if Eris is home on a Wednesday or Saturday, we will talk about the listening. We want to hear about it. And so, because if we ask Josh, how did the listening go? His standard response is, it went as it was supposed to be.
So days like this, what do you tell them?
I tell them that, no one happened to sit with me on this day.
He's agonizingly zen. It really does drive me up the wall that he is so you know, but maybe part of it's a little bit of jealousy because it's like I wish I could be that at peace with everything, at least outwardly. And so, you know, for us, you know, it's fun. We want to, we want to know because, you know, who knows who all he would talk to in a day, you know?
I would like to share my testimony if you don't mind.
You could share anything you like.
Okay. Well, my testimony, I mean, I think you said love, right? I think love is the biggest part of, I think, our culture that we're missing, right? And my testimony, long story short, is I grew up in the church. I knew the stories. I knew what I thought God was. And I had a great life. I never worried about my next meal. And when I got out on my own, I moved to South Florida. And when I first got there, I had a 6-year girlfriend that we ended up splitting. And then I had, did really well for myself and ended up coming to a situation where money wasn't really in the picture for me anymore. And the day I moved into my apartment, as all this was happening, my mom found out she had cancer. So it was a really tough period of life where everything I created, relationships, money, family, everything I was blessed with, all literally came to a screeching halt. And so it was interesting for me that everything I thought I knew kind of got flipped on its head, and I was left with a huge void. And as all that happened, 2 weeks later, I ended up kind of drinking and going into that party scene, and I found myself in a jail cell, a few days later. So it was when I was, in the shower the next day after being in jail, and I said, I've got nothing. What do I do? And that void where people don't have love, they're not filled, they're not
Josh, you just had the chance to talk or to listen to three different people. It's funny that we're only men in this case, no? But it's okay.
You never know.
You never know. What's your feeling? Because you spoke with for an hour. So how do you feel about that?
I would say there's a certain sense of a kind of quiet satisfaction in having made these connections. It's kind of a humbling feeling, really, to have people choose to join you, not knowing you and perhaps not fully understanding what this is about. It feels like, to me, almost what we're meant to do. That young man who's been here a day and a half from Australia, never been this far from home, trying to figure out his life. And, who knows, maybe the idea of being with another human being was just inviting at this moment, even though he really, he sat down, he said, I don't know what I would talk about.
What do you think they take with them when they leave? Because I felt from far that a certain connection happened, and from being somebody strange, you became, after like 20 minutes of talking or listening, somebody familiar.
I guess in general, I hope they walk away feeling that maybe the world, their day is, you know, a little better of a place, a better of a moment in their lives than perhaps they had expected it was going to be.
I started my professional life as a clinical psychologist, and I used to do therapy and some of the normal clinical activity that most people in the clinical field do. However, over the years, and especially for the last over 20 years, I've dedicated myself to do forensic psychology. Forensic psychology is the area of psychology that assists or works with the legal system. And there's various forms of forensic psychology. My specialty over the years has been primarily criminal, and somewhat more recently I've been doing more civil work as well. But in the criminal environment is where I've done most of my years of, at least the last 2 decades of work. People within the prisons, within the jails, within the hospitals usually feel very isolated. They don't feel like they can be themselves. They can't speak openly most of the time about their crimes or their past. They're always relatively afraid of what can happen. It's a violent environment many times, and it becomes an environment where people become very lonely. And it's been astonishing to me that when I show up for an evaluation, sometimes I get people really thanking me for just spending time with them. And even though I'm there for a purpose and I'm there for an evaluation, they really enjoy the fact that I listen to them. I had a case where I had an opportunity to evaluate someone over the course of 3 or 4 years as they were preparing for and going through their trial. And this is someone who was being put on trial for murder, extortion, kidnapping. They were facing they were facing death penalty, in fact. Over the course of the time that I met with this person, he had obviously a relationship with myself where I listened to him and we talked. He also had a very good attorney that knew how to listen to him as well. He became a very different person by the time I stopped seeing him. And there was one day that I'll never forget where he started bawling and crying when he said to both of us, we were together that day for other reasons, but the attorney and myself were with him, and he started really crying and he said to us, "Had I had people like you in my life, I wouldn't be sitting here right now."
Wondering whether the professional therapeutic community has had any concerns about what I'm doing. I've made no presentations to that community. I haven't been, nothing about me has been published in that community specifically, but I can tell you that I've had quite a few therapists who have come across me, and I'd say almost uniformly they've been laudatory.
I think it's extraordinary. I think the idea that someone listens is a great thing. I mean, in any walk of life, at any moment in time, any person who's listening to another person is already a step ahead in many, many ways.
They seem to be fine with it. They seem to think that there's a need for more of it.
There's a difference between listening, and there's a difference, it is different from intervening or trying to guide people. So I think as long as the activity is about listening to people, allowing people to express themselves, getting to know people, and responding empathically and humanly to another person, there's nothing wrong and there's a lot of right about that.
I am not a therapist, and I tell people that explicitly when they ask me to share, my thoughts about a given situation.
One of the amazing things about having someone that listens to you is that means that you are talking and you can hear yourself as well.
Before I went out there, my feeling was the most important thing is to do no harm because you're trying to do good. And so I'm very careful about how I interact with people and what I share with them and any advice that I give them. And I also am aware of resources that I can refer people to so that if they wish to have or need help that I'm obviously not able to provide, that I can hopefully point them in a direction that will get them closer to what they need in the longer term.
When I first heard about the listening project and what it meant and what's going on, I was really surprised because it is different and it's something that I hadn't really thought about, but I think it's really great.
My name is Mitchell and I'm ready to play.
There is, or seems to be, a generalized sense that we have gone astray, that our devices have taken our attention, that our attention spans are shorter than they used to be. And I believe I see that with the poster. I set this poster up consciously with the notion that before I can give to you, you're going to have to, in a sense, make a small investment. You're going to have to take the time to stop and read and understand. And, I watch for hours people streaming by who are willing to turn their heads and look at it, but not willing to stop. So they see the listening project. Maybe they see my name, maybe they see a few words, and, on they go. I think that cultures do change, ways of living change, and I think that in my own lifetime, these trends have arisen driven by technology, and they worry me greatly. If I saw someone who was sitting down willing to listen to people, I might well be the person sitting down and talking about my concerns and fears for where we're headed, given that we don't often take the time to really sit down and interact face to face, listening patiently, taking the time to give that kind of gift to one another. Maybe the most important aspect of this project is being out there and, in a sense, modeling a way of being with other people, a way of valuing how we interact, literally, how we interact in the moment of opening, as I metaphorically understand it, this door and inviting people to come through and to sit with me and take the time, to struggle if they need to through whatever it is they're struggling with. It doesn't matter to me so much whether people sit with me on a given day, or it's 1, or it's 3, or it's 12. I'm at peace opening the door. I don't solicit people. I don't actively ask people to join me, because it's important to me that they feel that if they're doing this, it's absolutely voluntary. They're doing it because they wish to. I sit and sometimes I think about things in my life, or sometimes I think about doing this and what it's been like up to now and what it means to me. Sometimes, like all of us, I don't think about much at all.
Could you ask me a question, because I'm not really sure what to
Absolutely,
prompt?
absolutely. Let me think of a question to ask you. So if you could go back to your teenage self and share some wisdom with that teenage self, do you have any idea what that might be?
Yes.
Oh, I'd like to know.
Okay. So my teenage self didn't value education very much. I think I would have been able to achieve a lot more academically if I had recognized or identified myself as an intelligent person. I came here as an immigrant when I was younger, and I have two brothers, and so we grew up in a kind of a rough neighborhood in New Jersey, and my parents.
I think, you know, we have a lot on our minds, and we're not necessarily ready, even when the opportunity, you know, visits us, to get to those things immediately. But if we are given time, and, you know, just that long pause of someone being willing to sit there with you and let you, in a sense, evolve your own thoughts and feelings, people will often get to something that, you know, is important to them and may be difficult for them. Well, that's a beautiful story, if I may say, because you took a deficit that you experienced, a significant one as a kid, a painful one, and you turned it into empathy and compassion and education and all these wonderful things.
Thank you.
So I mean, can I ask you another question?
Sure.
I want to plant the seed in people's minds, you know, get them to think, well, how am I when it comes to listening? Am I a good listener? Do I really pay attention to the people in my life? Do I feel listened to? From time to time, someone will come by and they'll say, well, what do you charge? And I say, no, you know, it's meant as a gift. I tell myself, if I ever take a dime, you know, for doing this, then I will stop, because it's, you know, that's not what it's about at all. This is Encinitas in North County, San Diego. And if you look past the tracks and past the Coast Highway, you can see there's a fairly large green patch there with a little parking lot next to it. And this is called Swami's Beach Park, and you can take some steps down to the beach, or you can hang out in the park. And we're going to that patch of green, which is the first place that I ever did the listening project.
Here?
Yeah, June 20th, 2022.
And why here? Because,
Well-
I mean, I don't see a lot of traffic going on. It's like, you were shy? What happened?
Well, I have been shy in my life, but I think not this time so much. I think I came here first because this is my home. I live in this town, and I thought, well, you have no idea what's going to happen. Maybe no one will pay any attention to you, no one will join you, so you might as well, you know, instead of driving 22 miles, drive 2 or 3 and come here. And I did, and it was actually an amazing day in my life, because I had envisioned what the project might be like at best before I ever started. And that day was pretty much, you know, a mirror of what I had hoped for.
When children are given a platform at a young age to be listened to, they also learn how to listen, and I think that is huge, especially in the world today. Obviously, technology has become a very challenging barrier in a lot of our communication, even as adults, especially in children. So the younger we're able to model the importance of listening to others, the easier it is to kind of form that foundation so that in life, the children really do develop that art of listening, and not just hearing, but listening and truly being able to hear what the other people are saying.
One message about listening and all that comes with it, I think it would have to do with really understanding how powerful we are, the power that we have to affect one another.
The necessity for people to look for someone who listens to them is crazy in the world of bartending, because you have customers from all over coming up to you asking you for a drink, but they will stay and they'll talk to you and they'll drink with you and they'll sit there and ask you questions about your life and tell you about theirs. I learned so much from the customers that I served, an insane amount of life lessons, personal growth. I've learned so much about other people's lives, and putting it into perspective of my own life has been something that's been very helpful. I think in a world where we find out most about everyone's lives online, we don't really get to sit and talk with people face to face.
As a kid growing up in sort of the early social media age, you know, and moving into COVID, I think it feels like people are very isolated from each other. I feel like, you know, since high school, it's just gotten worse and worse. And so I think trying to introduce the idea of listening as, you know, as a responsibility, as something you can go out and do with intentionality is very important.
In 2020, I listened to a call from God to come and create a mixed community of men and women. We call this Casa Misericordia.
Casa Misericordia.
Yeah, House of Mercy. I am a sister of mercy, the first woman, the founder of our community. This is a home where people are welcome. The neighborhood is 90% Hispanic. 30% of those people live in poverty. So they come and they meet La Virgen.
Let's talk about listening a little bit.
Yes.
What do you say?
Yes.
Ready?
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay. In Catholicism, the concept of listening is important. Does it exist? What can you tell me about that?
In Catholicism, I think there could be many opinions, but what I love is being Catholic, being Christian, roots me in the Bible. And before you came, I was thinking of what are words from the Bible? Be still and know that I am God. If I'm still, maybe I can listen better. The story of Elijah, you know, going to the mountain and the storm, and God wasn't there. And something else happened, God wasn't there. And then he heard a still breeze and knew God was there. So I feel like we're invited to listen carefully and to listen through things. I think God listens to our tears. God listens to our joys, our sorrows, our worries. And I think at times, the way God listens is through another human person.
I think that listening, real listening, when you really care to hear the other person, to give them time and space and attention, I think that has to come from a place of compassion.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. So when we're really listening, we are like partners with God in make you feel better.
Yeah.
I think of myself as a simple person, really. I don't think I'm particularly book smart, intelligent. I don't think that anything I am or that I've done is at all exceptional, really.
I think in Josh's mind, what he's doing is what any good person should do, and that any human should do for another human being.
The person who comes to confess, what do they gain confessing?
Yeah.
And the priest that is listening, what does he or she gain from listening?
I think from the side of the person confessing, it is a way to find freedom. And from the priest's side, I have heard priests be amazed at what people share.
Listening doesn't exist outside of that kind of realm or aura of compassion. You have to value someone to some extent to really listen to them.
And that they keep it confidential. I used to live in San Francisco, and I used to see this priest friend of mine walking. And I said, "You walk all the time." And he said, "Especially after I hear confession." You know, the listening and to let it go and to pray for the people who have come.
Because listening is work. You know, it's a practice, it's a discipline. It's not hard to do, but it takes some practice, it takes some time, it takes some ganas, some will to understand, but even more, I think, to feel the value of it.
Say your name,
Okay.
who you are, what you do.
Rabbi Scott Meltzer. I'm the rabbi right here at Or Shalom Synagogue and a professor at San Diego State University. Judaism and the responsibility of being a Jew and what it means to be a Jew is always embodied. It's always about what people do and say and how they act, more importantly than what they think or what they feel. So it's how we treat each other, it's what we eat and what we don't eat. It's related to all the senses. And for a whole lot of that, it only happens if we're able to hear and to be heard. So this is the oldest continuously active synagogue in town. There's an older synagogue building. The synagogue community that built this building back in the 20s has a building that they built in the 80s, in the 1880s, that the city bought, and the city actually moved to Old Town. It's called Heritage Park. But it's not a synagogue, hasn't been a synagogue for almost 100 years. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. It's a commandment. It is God commanding the Jewish people that we have to listen, that there is a reality out there. And the way that we're called to pay attention isn't look at this, or think about this, or know this. The line that comes up all the time is Shema Yisrael. You know, Israel, the Jewish people, you need to listen, because that's how we experience reality.
Before the statement of Hear of Israel, there's another one that says, Hear Israel, everything you have to do.
Yep.
So, but why the Shema, the statement? Because it basically is a statement, no?
Mm-hmm. It's a commandment.
A commandment.
Tishma,
So listen,
Shema.
what is after the Ten Commandments? What is not before?
Good. It's neat because it falls in a very neat place. So the 10 Commandments, and then that you need to do all these things that I have commanded you, and you need to listen to them, Israel, and you need to observe them so that it will be good for you, and so that it will lengthen your days on the land that I'm giving you. So Shema Yisrael, so really pay attention, own them, observe them, and heed them. And then right after that, the next verse is Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your being. That is, you've given a whole set of commandments. You're told you really need to hear this. You really need to internalize this. You really need to heed this to make this part and parcel of your life. So listen up, O Israel, that God is God, and therefore you should love God with all your heart and all your soul and so forth. It's a beautiful line from the book of Exodus when Moses is standing at the burning bush. And God says to Moses, V'shamati et zakatam, and I listened to, I heard their moaning, so that the whole possibility of redemption, of being saved in this world, the whole story of how we move from being slaves to being free, starts with God listening and hearing our sadness, our problems, our suffering, and then God responding to that sadness. And in Latin, we say imitatio Dei, our obligation to be like God. Just like God is loving, we should be loving. Just like God is compassionate, we should be compassionate. So too, just like God listens to the suffering of others and helps to save them, to help them, we're obligated to always have our ears open and attuned to the suffering that's around us, so we can be agents of making things better, of helping people through listening.
I think that listening doesn't exist outside of that kind of realm or aura of compassion. You have to value someone to some extent to really listen to them.
Platica un poquito por qué empezaste a trabajar en un hospicio.
Ok.
A ver.
Hace casi 7 años yo estuve en coma. Bueno, tuve un problema muy complicado de salud y en resumen estuve en coma y ya no me daban como posibilidades de vida.
Uh-huh.
Y yo escuchaba mientras yo estaba en coma.
¿Escuchabas todo lo que te decía?
Yo escuchaba lo que sucedía alrededor de mí. O sea, de repente escuchaba conversaciones entre las enfermeras, entre los doctores, entre mis familiares. Entonces escuchaba, ¿no? Uh-huh. Por eso es que yo tengo tanto respeto al entrar con alguien que aparentemente no me está escuchando.
Porque sabes que
Porque yo ya he estado ahí. Sé que, yo escuchaba. Entonces yo asumo que ellos también me están escuchando. En el hospicio en donde yo estoy, los pacientes que llegan ahí es porque ya están a punto de, en la fase final, pueden estar a horas o días de morir. Y otro tipo de pacientes que llegan ahí son pacientes que se quedan por unos días debido a que sus familiares tienen ya mucho cansancio o tienen algún viaje o alguna situación en particular y necesitan que alguien cuide de su enfermo por unos días.
En los últimos momentos de la vida de un ser humano, ¿qué tan importante para esas personas es el ser escuchado, el realmente ser escuchado? ¿Hace alguna diferencia?
Yo creo que sí hace mucha diferencia.
¿Por qué?
Porque muchas veces se quedan, lo que yo veo es que se quedan con mensajes que quisieran compartir y muchas veces no encontraron el momento en toda su vida para expresarlo. O les llegan momentos, como les llaman aha moments, ¿no? O momentos de realización, de darse cuenta de algo muy importante que les tomó toda su vida para darse cuenta, ya estando con la muerte prácticamente ahí esperando. Se dice que uno de los últimos sentidos en irse cuando mueres es la audición. Entonces nunca debemos de considerar que porque un paciente esté inconsciente, porque tiene los ojos cerrados, porque aparentemente no te escucha, lo vamos a ignorar o no le voy a hacer caso o lo que sea, ¿no? Yo siempre cuando tengo un paciente así, si yo no lo conozco, entro y me presento aunque él esté o ella esté inconsciente. Siempre me presento como un acto de respeto, como un acto de amor, como un acto de compasión.
Compassion really only comes when love is present. And so that I think that what I've come to believe is that listening is an act of love.
Time and time again, he'll say, this person really needed it today and I just happened. So there's this strange serendipity that seems to be happening where he's set up to listen and there's somebody who really, really needs him that day who just happens to walk by.
And, you know, I know people in many faiths and such talk about loving everyone. And to me, that was, in some sense, always a kind of abstraction in my life until recently. But now I feel like I understand it, for me, in some sense, because I find that it's not that hard to love the people who join me. Whatever they do, whoever they are, doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter whatever categorizations we put on each other.
You know, I think that some parts of the project, the idea, you know, that you may be hearing, you know, about somebody's darkest moments, I don't know if I can do that, to be honest. You know, I think that Dad has a way of compartmentalizing things. You know, that somebody can tell him about their worst day and he can listen and he can sympathize and he can show compassion. And somehow he can set that aside, put that in a box, so to speak, and not let it affect the rest of his day. And I don't know if I'm capable of that.
I simply can love them because they're sharing themselves with me and they're giving me some trust, and hopefully I'm giving them my trust and I'm giving them my time and attention. And I think that, you know, that is the place where love germinates, where it can grow.
Intencionalmente saber que estoy aquí para escucharte, darme cuenta que tengo dos oídos y una boca, entonces tengo más capacidad de escuchar que de hablar, y estar teniendo una escucha activa, no estar pensando yo en estar presente.
I think that to really hear somebody, one needs to be willing to create a vulnerable relationship with. I think the command, ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha, to love the other as one loves oneself, is at the core of serious listening.
I'm faced, both with my own mortality, the reality of time and its movement. And at the same time, I find myself, in a sense, empowered in a way I've never felt before, because I see, through this experience, and generally in my life, through the listening that I've done, to people I know and people who I haven't really known, but who I encountered. I've seen the power of listening to build relationships and to, salve hurts and to efface loneliness. And I just think, whether you're going out in public with a couple of chairs and a poster, or whether you've got your best friend beside you, or you meet someone sitting in an airport lounge or on a bus, whatever it is, you are, whether you want to be, whether you see it, whether you believe it or not, you're in some relationship to that person. And you have the power to decide what that's going to be. Maybe there's nothing there, but maybe you can make someone's day, just by turning to them and saying, hey, how are you? And actually listening to what they have to say.
Wow, está padrísimo.
Yo expreso mis sentimientos, mis vivencias a través de mi canvas mucho más fácil que con palabras. Muchas veces no me gusta decir la historia que quiero decir, porque quiero que el espectador sienta mi pintura, y lo que es una historia para mí feliz, para ti puede ser una historia triste. Todos los elementos que están aquí tienen una explicación de ser. La silla obviamente es la silla del entrevistador. La sombra de la otra silla está un poquito como off de la perspectiva, porque todos como individuos tenemos nuestra propia perspectiva. Las nubes siempre nos dan motivos para crear historias, fantasías, buscar formas, figuras. Este árbol lo puse desnudo aquí, porque cuando cuentas tu historia es muy íntima. Estas montañitas son como nuestro bagaje que cada quien trae. Este campo de flores es un campo de flores de un lugar en donde me encontré y en ese campo vi resiliencia, optimismo, muchos sentimientos encontrados. El origami es algo que repito yo mucho en mis cuadros. Son símbolo de deseos, de curación, mensajes de paz y esperanza. Y los puse con sombra para darle un efecto de escenografía. Para mí personalmente me recuerdan a mi mamá, porque mi mamá hacía pajaritos, le jalaba la colita y mueven las alas, que a mí nunca me han quedado.